There is a sound you learn to listen for in Japan. Not a siren, not a bell, something quieter. A faint rattle in a glass of water, a door frame ticking in its joints, a hanging lamp beginning, very slightly, to swing. Most of the time it passes in a few seconds, and the country goes on with its afternoon. Japan records more than 1,500 earthquakes a year. Most are too small to notice. Some are not. The islands sit at the meeting point of 4 tectonic plates, jostling and grinding beneath the sea floor, and that pressure has shaped everything above it. The mountains, the hot springs, the volcanoes strung down the spine of the archipelago like beads on a wire. Roughly a tenth of the world's active volcanoes stand on this narrow chain of land. So here is the strange thing. This is one of the most geologically restless places on Earth, and it is also, by almost any measure, one of the calmest places a person can stand. A moss garden in Kyoto where the only movement is water. A wooden temple hall that has held its shape for 1,200 years. A shrine path at dawn where the loudest sound is your own footsteps on gravel. That contradiction is the whole subject of this film. Not Japan as a postcard, but Japan as an answer to a question the land keeps asking. If the ground beneath you will not stay still, if the fires come, if the sea rises, if the city burns down in a night and burns down again a generation later, what do you build? What do you believe? Over the next hour, we'll travel slowly from a volcano that people were forbidden to climb, to a village whose roofs are shaped like hands in prayer, from a fishing hamlet that became the largest city on Earth to a single ruined dome left standing on purpose. We'll walk beneath thousands of red gates, each one paid for by a person who wanted something. We'll sit with monkeys in a steaming pool in the snow. We won't rush. The places we're going were not made in a hurry, and they don't reward hurry. Let's begin where Japan itself begins, in the imagination, with a mountain that is also a furnace. On a clear winter morning, Mount Fuji does not look like a real mountain. It looks like something drawn. That near-perfect cone, the snow line sitting at a precise altitude, the wide flanks sweeping down to the plain without a single competing peak to break the symmetry. It is 3,776 meters tall, the highest point in Japan, and it is visible on good days from the towers of Tokyo, 100 kilometers away, floating pale above the haze. It is also an active volcano. That fact tends to get softened in photographs. Fuji is not a dormant relic. It is a stratovolcano built by repeated eruptions over hundreds of thousands of years, sitting almost exactly where 3 tectonic plates converge. Its last eruption began in December of 1707 and lasted around 2 weeks. It threw no lava, but it filled the sky with ash. In Edo, the city that would become Tokyo, ash fell for days, deep enough to collapse roofs and ruin fields. Farmland downwind was poisoned for years. Famine followed. That eruption left a crater on the southeastern flank that you can still pick out from the right angle. It has been quiet since. 3 centuries is a long human silence and a short geological one. The mountain is monitored constantly. And yet nobody who lives beneath it treats it as a threat first. Fuji is, before anything else, sacred. For most of Japanese history, the mountain was not a destination, but a deity. Early worship kept a respectful distance, praying toward the peak rather than approaching it, because the eruptions were understood as the anger of the kami who lived there. Shrines were built at the base to calm that anger. Over time, the fear turned into pilgrimage. By the Edo period, from the 17th century onward, organized pilgrimage groups called Fujiko had spread across the country. Ordinary townspeople saved together for years so that a few of them could make the climb on everyone's behalf, in white robes, chanting as they went. For those who could not travel, small artificial Fuji mounds were raised in city neighborhoods so people could climb a symbolic version of the mountain in an afternoon. Some of those miniature Fujis still exist in Tokyo, tucked behind shrine buildings, a few meters high, worn smooth by centuries of feet. But if you were a woman, none of this was open to you. Women were barred from the summit of Fuji until 1872. The reasoning came from a tangle of religious ideas about ritual purity that ran through much of Japanese mountain worship, and the ban was enforced with real seriousness. There were boundary markers on the slopes beyond which women could not pass. In 1832, a woman named Takayama Tatsu is recorded as having climbed to the summit anyway, disguised in men's clothing, guided by sympathetic Fujiko members. The prohibition was formally lifted in the early Meiji years, when the new government was dismantling a great many old restrictions at once. Today, more than half of Fuji's summer climbers are women. The climb itself surprises people. It is not a wilderness experience. During the official season, in July and August, the trails carry hundreds of thousands of people. There are mountain huts, vending machines, queues on the final switchbacks before dawn. Above the tree line, the mountain is black volcanic gravel, loose underfoot, with no shade and thinning air. Climbers walk through the night to reach the top for Goraiko, the arrival of the light, sunrise seen from above the cloud layer. There is an old saying, usually delivered with a smile: "A wise man climbs Fuji once, and only a fool climbs it twice." What stays with most people is not the summit, but the shape of the thing from a distance. Fuji is the most reproduced image in Japanese art. Hokusai's 36 views placed it behind fishermen, behind carpenters, behind that famous wave, always in the background, always the same, while human life churned in the foreground. That was the point. The mountain is the fixed thing. And the quiet joke of geology is that it isn't fixed at all. It is a fire that has simply not spoken for 300 years, and the entire capital of Japan lives within sight of it and builds anyway. Come down off the mountain and go north, and you reach a string of 5 lakes lying in the low ground at Fuji's feet. They were made by the volcano itself. Old lava flows dammed the valleys, and the water gathered behind them. The largest by shoreline is Kawaguchiko, and on the right morning it does something that feels almost unfair. It goes completely still. There is a narrow window, usually just after dawn, before the day's wind comes up, and before the boats start moving. When the lake surface loses all texture, the water becomes a plane of dark glass, and Fuji, standing across it, appears twice, once in the sky and once beneath, snowcap pointing down into the depth. Photographers call it Sakasa Fuji, the inverted Fuji. It appears on the 1,000-yen note. Getting it requires patience and luck. The mountain is often hidden. Fuji generates its own weather, pulling cloud onto its shoulders by mid-morning for much of the year. Clear, windless winter dawns give the best odds, when cold air settles heavy over the lake and the atmosphere is scrubbed of summer haze. People wait for days, some come back for years. What makes the reflection more than a photograph is what it says about the relationship between this landscape and the people who look at it. The lakes exist because the volcano erupted. The soil is rich because of ash. The hot springs that fill the region's bathhouses are heated by the same magma system that buried Edo in grey powder in 1707. Every gentle thing here is downstream of a violent thing. There is a word that gets used a lot for this kind of scene: shizen, nature, but not nature as wilderness. Closer to nature as a state of being, things as they are of themselves. The reflection isn't a trick or an ornament. It's the lake doing nothing at all, and the mountain doing nothing at all, and the two of them briefly agreeing. Stand there long enough, and the first breath of wind arrives. The surface wrinkles. The second mountain breaks apart into 1,000 pieces of light, and then it is just a lake again, and a cold morning, and someone packing up a tripod. The image was never in the water, it was in the stillness. That distinction matters more and more as we go on. 400 years ago, Tokyo did not exist. There was a marshy stretch of coast at the head of a bay, a castle in poor repair, and a scatter of fishing villages on reclaimed mud. The place was called Edo, meaning roughly estuary or river gate. In 1590, a warlord named Tokugawa Ieyasu was maneuvered into taking this unpromising territory as his domain. He accepted and then did something extraordinary with it. Ieyasu won control of Japan at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 and made Edo the seat of his shogunate. Everything followed from that. To keep the regional lords weak, he required them to maintain residences in Edo and to spend alternate years there, leaving their families behind as hostages when they went home. Hundreds of lords, with their retainers and servants and suppliers, all cycling through one city. Around that machinery grew merchants, carpenters, fishmongers, actors, printers, priests. Canals were dug. Hills were cut down, and the earth used to fill in the shallows of the bay. By the early 1700s, Edo held over 1 million people. It was quite possibly the largest city in the world, and it burned constantly. Edo was built almost entirely of wood and paper and thatch, packed tight, heated and lit by open flame, and swept by dry winter winds off the mountains. Fires were so routine that they were nicknamed the Flowers of Edo. The city developed one of the world's first organized firefighting systems, whose principal tactic was not extinguishing the fire, but demolishing the buildings in its path. The Great Mereki Fire of 1657 burned for 3 days, destroyed most of the city, including the main keep of Edo Castle, and killed an estimated 100,000 people. The castle keep was never rebuilt. People simply rebuilt everything else and kept the fire lanes wider and carried on. Then, in 1923, at 2 minutes before noon on the 1st of September, the Great Kanto earthquake struck. The shaking itself was devastating. What followed was worse. Cooking fires for the midday meal were overturned across a wooden city on a windy day, and the resulting firestorm swept districts of Tokyo and Yokohama. In one open lot where tens of thousands had gathered with their belongings, a fire whirl killed nearly all of them in minutes. Around 140,000 people died. In the chaos afterward, false rumors spread that Korean residents were poisoning wells, and vigilante mobs murdered thousands of Koreans and others mistaken for them. A part of the story Japan has been slow to face, and one worth naming plainly. The city rebuilt again, this time with more concrete and wider boulevards and new parks planned as fire breaks. 22 years later, it burned a third time. On the night of March 9, 1945, American B-29s dropped incendiary bombs on the wooden districts of eastern Tokyo. The resulting firestorm destroyed around 40 square kilometers of the city and killed roughly 100,000 people in a single night, the deadliest air raid in history. By the war's end, much of Tokyo was flat. Photographs from 1946 show a horizon of ash with a few concrete shells standing in it, and people living in shacks made of salvaged tin. Within 20 years, that same city hosted the 1964 Olympics, with a new elevated expressway network and the first bullet train in the world running west out of the station. Today, the Greater Tokyo area holds around 37 million people, the largest urban agglomeration on the planet. What's remarkable is not just the scale, but the texture. Tokyo did not rebuild as one grand plan. It grew back in fragments, neighborhood by neighborhood, which is why the city still feels like a collection of villages that ran into each other. Turn off a main road in Yanaka or Nezu, and within 30 seconds, the noise drops away. There are potted plants on the pavement, a wooden house that survived the bombing, a small shrine no bigger than a garden shed with a fresh offering on it. A 500-year-old temple sits at the base of a glass tower, and neither seems to find the other strange. This is the pattern we'll keep meeting. The city has been erased 3 times in living memory or close to it. And its instinct each time was not to build something fireproof and forbidding, but to build something ordinary again as fast as possible and to leave room in it for a small quiet place on a side street. To understand how much energy this country holds under its calm, stand on the 2nd floor of a building above Shibuya Crossing and watch it for 20 minutes. 5 roads meet here in central Tokyo. When the vehicle lights go red, they go red in every direction at once, and the entire intersection is surrendered to people on foot. Pedestrians pour off all corners simultaneously, including diagonally across the middle. At peak times, up to 3,000 people cross in a single change of the lights. Estimates for a busy day run to 500,000 crossings. It is the busiest pedestrian intersection in the world. Above it, screens the size of buildings. Advertising in constant motion, a dog food commercial 40 feet tall, a pop song leaking out of a speaker mounted somewhere invisible. In the rain it is better because the umbrellas turn the crowd into a moving field of circles and the neon smears across the wet asphalt. And here is the thing that surprises people who expect chaos. Nobody collides. 3,000 people walk into each other's paths from 6 directions and thread through without contact, without shouting, without much visible negotiation at all. The crossing empties in under a minute. Then the lights change, the traffic resumes, and the pavements refill for the next round. It looks like a city functioning at maximum load, and it is. But it also looks, from above, oddly like breathing. Fill, empty, fill, empty. On the corner stands a bronze statue of a dog. Hachiko was an Akita who belonged to a university professor in the 1920s and met him at Shibuya station each evening. In 1925, the professor died at work. The dog kept coming to the station at the same time every day for 9 more years, until his own death in 1935. Commuters fed him. A newspaper wrote about him. The statue is now the most common meeting point in Tokyo, and there is something fitting about that. The busiest crossing on Earth organizes itself around a monument to waiting. Shibuya sits about 8 kilometers from the Imperial Palace, in a district that was farmland within recent memory and was flattened by bombing in 1945. The towers are new, several went up in the last decade. Beneath them, in the tangle of small streets behind the station, there are still standing bars with 6 seats and a tiny shrine wedged between 2 office buildings with a red gate barely tall enough to walk through. That coexistence isn't ironic here, it's simply how the country is arranged. Loudness and silence are not opposites in Japan, they are neighbors, often within the same block, and people move between them all day without thinking about it. Step out of Shibuya's noise into an alley, and the sound drops as if someone closed a door. Take the train south out of Kyoto and get off 2 stops down, and you arrive at the head of a path that climbs a wooded mountain. The path is a tunnel. It is made of gates. Fushimi Inari Taisha is the head shrine of Inari, and the torii gates that line its trails number somewhere around 10,000. They stand so close together that the sunlight comes through in slats, and walking beneath them turns the whole world vermilion. The color is not decorative. Vermilion, made historically with mercury-based cinnabar, was believed to repel misfortune, and it also happened to preserve the wood. A torii marks a boundary. On one side, ordinary ground. On the other, sacred ground. In principle, 1 gate is enough. Fushimi Inari has 10,000 because each of them was bought. That is the detail that changes how the place feels. Every gate here was donated by an individual or a business, in gratitude for a wish granted or in hope of one to come. Look at the back of any gate as you walk up and you'll see black characters on the wood. The donor's name and the date it was raised. Small companies, family businesses, individuals. A gate costs from a few 100,000 yen for the smallest to over 1 million for the largest, and the wood rots in the humid mountain air within a decade or 2, so they are constantly being replaced. The tunnel you walk through is being rewritten continuously, 1 prayer at a time, and has been since the 1600s when the custom took hold. Inari is the kami of rice, and therefore of harvest, of prosperity, of business, of the money that grows from grain. There are more shrines to Inari in Japan than to any other deity, something in the order of 30,000 of them, from grand complexes to tiny boxes on the roofs of department stores. The shrine at Fushimi dates its founding to 711, which makes it older than Kyoto itself. And then there are the foxes. Stone foxes sit in pairs throughout the grounds, hundreds of them, often with red bibs tied around their necks. They are not the god. They are the kitsune, Inari's messengers and servants, and each usually carries something in its mouth, a rice sheaf, a scroll, a jewel, or most often a key, the key to the granary. In folklore, foxes are among the most powerful of Japan's shape-shifting creatures. The oldest and strongest grow multiple tails, up to 9, and can take human form. Some tales cast them as tricksters who lead travelers astray with false lights. Others tell of foxes who take a human wife or husband and live faithfully for years before being discovered. They are ambiguous beings, helpful if respected, dangerous if slighted, which is a fairly accurate description of most forces in a country like this one. Most visitors walk 15 minutes up, take their photographs at the densest stretch of gates, and turn back. The full circuit is about 4 kilometers and takes 2 to 3 hours, climbing to the summit of Mount Inari, 230 meters up. Do it, and the crowd thins to nothing within 20 minutes. The gates get smaller and older. You start passing side clearings full of miniature shrines, thousands of small stone markers stacked in tiers, each one raised by a worshipper to a personally named aspect of the god. Cats sleep among them, candles burn at some, go at night, and the trails are lit by low lamps, mostly empty. The vermilion goes almost black. You can hear the bamboo moving. It is one of the few places where a religious site with millions of annual visitors becomes genuinely solitary, simply because most people stopped walking. On the eastern hills of Kyoto, a wooden temple stands out over a wooded slope on stilts. The main hall of Kiyomizu-dera projects from the hillside on a scaffold of pillars, 168 of them, some 13 meters tall, supporting a broad veranda that hangs over the treetops with nothing beneath it but air and maples. The whole structure is joined with wooden joinery. Not a single nail was used in the stage. That technique is called kakezukuri, and it is not a stunt. In a country where the ground moves, rigid connections are a liability. A nailed joint concentrates stress and shears. Traditional Japanese joinery uses interlocking cuts and wooden pegs that allow members to shift slightly against each other, absorbing and dissipating movement. The building flexes instead of snapping. It's the same principle behind the country's 5-story pagodas, which have survived centuries of earthquakes at a famously low failure rate, their loosely stacked floors sliding against a central pillar like a hanging weight. Ancient carpenters arrived at earthquake engineering empirically, over generations of watching what fell down and what didn't. The temple was founded in 778, before Kyoto was the capital, around a waterfall on this hillside. The name means pure water temple. The current main hall dates to 1633, rebuilt under the shogun Tokugawa Iemitsu after one of the many fires that have taken the complex down over the centuries. It has burned and been rebuilt at least 9 times. That is normal here. In Japan, a building's age is often measured less by the physical timber than by the unbroken continuity of the form and the practice. The Edo period gave the veranda a grim reputation. There is an old expression, to jump off the stage of Kiyomizu, meaning to take a decisive leap of faith. People did it literally. Temple records document 234 jumps between 1694 and 1864. The belief was that if you survived the roughly 13-meter fall, your wish would be granted. The survival rate was remarkably about 85%. The vegetation below broke the falls. The practice was banned in 1872. Behind the main hall stands a smaller shrine, Jishu, dedicated to a deity of love and matchmaking. In front of it are 2 stones set into the ground about 18 meters apart. Tradition says that if you can walk from one to the other with your eyes closed and find it, you will find love. Do it with help from a friend calling directions, and love will come to you the same way, through an intermediary. Watching people attempt it is one of the more charming spectacles in Kyoto. Adults inching along with their eyes screwed shut, arms out, laughing, while their friends shout increasingly unhelpful corrections. Down below the stage, the waterfall that gave the temple its name splits into 3 streams. Visitors queue with long-handled cups to drink from them. Each stream is said to grant a different benefit: longevity, success in study, a fortunate love life. Drinking from all 3 is considered greedy. Choose one. Most people do choose and take it seriously, and that small act of self-limitation in front of an offered gift may be the most Japanese moment available to a tourist. From the stage, looking out, you see the whole city in the valley, a low grey grid with the modern tower blinking in the middle of it, hemmed by mountains on 3 sides. Kyoto was the capital for over 1,000 years and was famously spared the firebombing that took Tokyo and Osaka. What you're looking at is one of the few Japanese cityscapes with a deep visual memory intact. Behind you, the timber creaks as several hundred people shift their weight on a nailless platform built in 1633. On the western edge of Kyoto, at the foot of the hills where the Hozu River comes out of its gorge, there is a path about half a kilometer long that runs through a stand of moso bamboo. The stalks are as thick as a forearm and rise straight for 20 meters or more before their canopy closes overhead. The light that reaches the path is green and cold. Bamboo is a grass, not a tree, and it grows at a speed that seems mechanical. Some species put on nearly a meter in a day. A stalk reaches full height in a matter of months, and then never grows any taller. It just hardens. Underground, the whole grove is typically a single organism, a shared rhizome network, which is why a bamboo forest feels less like a collection of plants than one enormous thing viewed from inside. Arashiyama has been an aristocratic retreat since the Heian period, over 1,000 years ago. Nobles came out from the capital to compose poetry on boats on the river, to watch the maples turn, to escape the city in a manner not much different from how people escape it now. Temples were founded here for the same reason. Tenryuji, at the grove's southern end, holds a garden laid out in the 14th century by the monk Muso Soseki, designed so that the borrowed landscape of the surrounding mountains becomes part of the composition. It has survived 8 fires and remains in its planting essentially unchanged for 700 years. Bamboo runs deep in Japanese life. It becomes scaffolding, water pipes, ladles, flutes, tea whisks, umbrella ribs, sword grips, and the frames of paper doors. It is used at New Year, paired with pine, as a symbol of resilience, because it bends heavily in wind and snow and then returns to true. The metaphor is obvious and people still use it, because it happens to be accurate. And it makes a sound. When wind moves through a mature grove, the hollow stalks knock against each other with a dry, irregular clacking, while the leaves high above produce a continuous soft rush. Japan's Ministry of the Environment includes the Arashiyama Grove on its list of 100 soundscapes to be preserved, an official national inventory of sounds worth protecting, alongside the ringing of temple bells and the calls of particular birds. The idea of legally recognizing a sound as heritage is, I think, one of the more quietly beautiful ideas any government has had. The catch is that the grove is now extremely popular. On an ordinary afternoon, the path carries a slow-moving river of visitors, and the famous soundscape is buried under conversation and camera shutters. The advice everyone gives is the same, and it is correct. Arrive before 7 in the morning. Do that, and for perhaps an hour you get the thing itself. Mist in the lower stalks. No voices. Just that dry knocking overhead, and the strange sensation of standing inside a single living organism the size of a village. Deep in the mountains of Gifu Prefecture, in a river valley that spends much of the winter under snow, there is a village of houses with roofs like tents. The roofs are the whole story. They are thatched up to 60 degrees steep, and they descend almost to the ground on the long sides of the house. The style is called Gasho Zukuri, and the name translates directly as constructed like hands in prayer, the 2 roof planes leaning together like palms pressed at the fingertips. Shirakawa-go, together with the neighboring valley of Gokayama, holds around 150 of these houses, some more than 250 years old and a few approaching 300. They are UNESCO World Heritage listed, and people still live in them. The steepness is entirely practical. This region receives some of the heaviest snowfall of any inhabited place on Earth. Accumulations of 2 to 3 meters are ordinary, and considerably more in a bad year. A shallow roof would collect that weight and be crushed. At 60 degrees, snow slides off under its own mass. The thatch is layered Suzuki grass up to half a meter thick, which insulates so effectively that the interior stays workable through winter. And the entire frame, the great crossed beams, the tiers of floors, the lattice under the thatch, is assembled with joinery and rope. No nails. Rope was used deliberately in the roof lashings rather than rigid fixings, because rope has give. In a heavy wind or a tremor, the structure can move and settle without tearing itself apart. The houses were not just homes, they were factories. Under those enormous roofs, the upper floors were open lofts, and for generations they were used for sericulture, raising silkworms. The valley was too steep and cold for reliable rice, so silk became the cash crop, and the roof cavity provided the warm, ventilated, smoke-treated space the worms needed. Smoke rising from the open hearth on the ground floor drifted up through the floorboards and preserved the timber and thatch against insects and rot. Every part of the design served 2 or 3 purposes at once. Then there is the thatching itself. A gasho roof needs full replacement roughly every 30 to 40 years. This is not a job a family can do alone. It takes a large crew, and it must be finished quickly. The village's answer was a mutual aid system called UE. When one house needed rethatching, the whole village turned out. 100, 200 people working across a day or two, hauling bundles of grass up ladders, stripping the old thatch, laying the new. In return, that family owed their labor to everyone else in turn. It was a debt system with no money in it, and it bound the valley together for centuries. It still operates, though now with volunteers and preservation funding alongside the villagers. Winter is when the place becomes unreal. On certain evenings in January and February, the village is lit up after dark, and the snow on the roofs takes the light and holds it, so that 150 warm shapes glow in a black valley under falling snow. The demand for those evenings is so high that access is now by advance reservation only. It's worth remembering, standing in that view, that this is not a museum built for the effect. The reason those roofs are steep is that this valley tries to bury itself every winter. The reason they used rope is that the ground moves. The reason the whole village helps rethatch one house is that no single family could survive here alone. Everything picturesque about Shirakawa-go is a solved problem. That's true of most beautiful things in Japan once you look underneath. In the Seto Inland Sea, a short ferry ride from Hiroshima, there is an island called Miyajima, Shrine Island. Its formal name is Itsukushima, and standing in the shallow water off its northern shore is a vermilion torii gate, 16 meters high, weighing around 60 tons, that appears at high tide to be floating. The gate is not driven into the seabed. It stands on its own weight. Its 6 pillars rest on foundations laid into the sand, and the main pillars are made of camphor wood, chosen for its resistance to rot and insects. The top crossbeam is hollow and packed with stones to add mass. This design has been replaced roughly 8 times since the 12th century, the current gate dating from 1875, and it holds itself upright through typhoons by not fighting the sea. At low tide, the water withdraws entirely, and you can walk out across the wet sand and stand beneath it, looking up at barnacles and coins wedged into the cracks of the pillars for luck. Behind it, the shrine itself is built on piers over the tidal flat, a long complex of connected halls and covered corridors that at high tide appears to be riding on the water. The reason for all of this is a matter of religious geography. The island itself was considered the deity, not a place where a god lives, the god, which meant that for centuries, ordinary people were not permitted to set foot on it at all. Pilgrims arrived by boat and sailed through the torii gate, which stands in the sea precisely because the sea was where the approach had to begin. The shrine was raised on piers so that its buildings would not violate the sacred soil. The purity rules were strict and specific. To preserve the island's sanctity, no one was allowed to die on Miyajima, and no one was allowed to give birth there. The pregnant and the gravely ill were carried to the mainland. This was maintained with real rigor into the modern era, and traces of it persist. There is still no cemetery on the island, and burial has historically been prohibited. For a long time after a funeral on the mainland, relatives were expected to observe a period of mourning before returning. The shrine as we know it was largely shaped in 1168 by Taira no Kiyomori, the most powerful man in Japan at the time, who adopted Itsukushima as his clan's protective shrine and rebuilt it on a scale intended to impress. He succeeded. The complex is now World Heritage listed, and the classic view, gate, water, and the forested cone of Mount Misen rising behind is counted among the 3 great views of Japan, a ranking that dates to the 17th century. Behind the shrine, the island rises to 535 meters and is largely covered in primeval forest that has never been logged, because cutting trees here was also forbidden. Sika deer wander the streets and the beaches, tame to the point of nuisance, historically regarded as messengers of the gods. Wild monkeys live on the upper slopes. Between 2019 and 2022, the Great Torii disappeared behind scaffolding for a full restoration, the first major overhaul in decades. Timber was replaced, the roof rethatched with cypress bark, the vermilion reapplied. When the sheeting came off, the gate looked new, which is to say it looked exactly as it always has. That is the arrangement here. The wood is temporary, the form is not. The best hour is the one just after sunset, when the tide is high and the lanterns along the corridors come on, and the gate stands in black water with its reflection wobbling under it, and the ferries have mostly stopped running, and you understand why someone decided 1,000 years ago that this particular island shouldn't be walked on carelessly. 2 hours south of Osaka, up a mountain road that switchbacks through cedar forest, there is a basin ringed by 8 peaks. Someone once described the shape as a lotus flower opening. In the year 816, a monk named Kukai asked the imperial court for permission to found a monastery here, far from the politics of the capital, and was granted it. He was 32 years old and had recently returned from China with a body of esoteric teaching that would become Shingon Buddhism. 1,200 years later, Koyasan is still a monastic town. Around 120 temples occupy the basin, and roughly half of them offer shukubo, temple lodging, originally for pilgrims, now open to anyone. You sleep on a futon on tatami in a wooden room with paper screens and no lock on the door. You eat shojin ryori, the vegetarian cuisine developed in monasteries, sesame tofu, mountain vegetables, pickles, miso, served in lacquer bowls on a low tray, with no meat, no fish, and traditionally none of the pungent alliums. It is austere and unexpectedly delicious, and the portions are calculated on the assumption that you are not doing anything strenuous. In the morning, before 6, you are welcome to attend the monk's service. This is the part visitors remember, a dark hall lit by candles and hanging gold ornaments, thick with incense, cold in winter. 2 or 3 monks chanting sutras in a low continuous drone, punctuated by a bell and the striking of a wooden fish drum. It goes on for 40 minutes or so. You are not asked to understand it. You sit at the back and let it happen, and something about the frequency of low male voices in a wooden room at dawn does a thing to the nervous system that is hard to argue with. Then breakfast, and the sliding doors are opened onto a small garden with frost on it. The heart of Koyasan is not the temples, but the cemetery. Okunoin is the largest graveyard in Japan. Over 200,000 monuments strung along a 2-kilometer path through a forest of cedars, some of the trees 600 years old and wide enough that 3 people couldn't join hands around them. Moss covers everything, the stones lean. Feudal lords are buried here, some of them enemies in life, lying 100 meters apart. So are ordinary families, and so in a stranger modern development are corporate memorials, a coffee company, a shipbuilder, a pesticide firm with a monument to the termites it has killed. At the far end, past a bridge where visitors are asked to bow, is the mausoleum of Kukai himself. And here is the belief that defines the place. Shingon doctrine holds that Kukai did not die. In 835, he entered a state of eternal meditation, and he remains in it, waiting for the future Buddha. He is not called dead, he is called asleep. Twice a day, every day, for over 1,000 years, monks have carried a meal to his door. Photography is not permitted beyond the last bridge. There are no lights on the path except the 10,000 lanterns in the hall nearby, some of which are said to have burned continuously for 900 years. Walking Okunoin at night, which is permitted and quietly encouraged, is the single most atmospheric hour available in Japan. Cedar trunks vanishing upward into dark, stone lanterns at intervals, statues of Jizo, the guardian of travelers and of children who died young, wearing red knitted caps and bibs put there by grieving parents, some of them recent, the wool still bright. Koyasan's population is a few thousand, and it shrinks. The monasteries depend increasingly on visitors to stay solvent. There is an obvious risk in that, and the monks know it. But there is also something in keeping with the tradition. This was always a place that received pilgrims, fed them, and let them sleep. What's changed is who is walking up the mountain. What hasn't is what happens in the hall at 5:30 in the morning. In the mountains of Nagano Prefecture, in a steep-sided gorge where the Yokoyu River runs, steam rises from cracks in the rock all year round. The ground is hot. The cliffs are sheer, the forest is dense, and for a third of the year the whole valley is under snow. Early observers called it Jigokudani, Hell Valley. It is the only place on Earth where wild monkeys bathe in hot springs. The animals are Japanese macaques, snow monkeys, with pink faces, thick grey-brown coats, and the distinction of being the northernmost living non-human primates in the world, surviving winters that regularly hit -15. They have lived in these mountains a long time. What they have not always done is bathe. That behavior is recent, and it is documented, and it began with a mistake. In the 1950s and 60s, the surrounding area was being developed for logging and skiing. Forest that the macaques depended on came down. Troops of monkeys, short of food, began raiding orchards and rubbish in the town of Yamanouchi, and there was pressure to cull them. A local man working for the railway company, along with others, began putting out food in the gorge to draw the animals away from the town, the origin of what became the Jigokudani monkey park in 1964. Then, in 1963, a young female was seen climbing into an outdoor hot spring pool at a nearby inn, apparently going after soybeans that had fallen in the water. She stayed in. Others copied her. Within a few years, bathing had spread through the troop, mostly among the females and juveniles. The inn's human guests were less delighted about sharing, so the park built a pool for the monkeys alone, and that is the pool in the photographs. This matters more than it might appear. Primatologists studying Japanese macaques had already documented cultural transmission in this species. Most famously, a young female on Koshima Island in 1953 who began washing sweet potatoes in water, a habit that spread through her troop and passed to later generations. Hot spring bathing is the same phenomenon at Jigokudani, an invented behavior, learned socially, inherited. A tradition, in other words. And like most traditions, it turns out to have a function. Research has found that bathing macaques show measurably lower stress hormone levels in winter, and it helps them conserve body heat in extreme cold. The monkeys are not tame and are not fed by visitors. They are habituated, indifferent to people, which is a different thing. You walk in along a narrow forest path, about 1.5 miles from the car park, often through deep snow, and arrive to find perhaps 40 macaques going about their day. Some in the water up to their necks, eyes half closed, steam curling off wet fur. Some grooming on the rocks in a long chain. Infants who are poor at regulating their own temperature, kept close. Juveniles doing what juveniles do, which is mainly bothering everyone. Occasionally one hauls itself out, walks past your boots without a glance, shakes and reconsiders. It is a strange thing to watch, and the strangeness comes from how ordinary it looks. There is no performance in it. They are simply cold, and there is warm water, and someone worked that out 60 years ago. The whole scene is a small monument to adaptation. Animals displaced by human industry who responded by inventing a new way to be comfortable in a valley named after hell, heated by the same volcanic system that makes this country dangerous in the first place. At 5:46 in the morning on the 17th of January, 1995, a fault ruptured beneath the Akashi Strait, a few kilometers from the city of Kobe. The shaking lasted about 20 seconds. In parts of the city, it reached the top of the Japanese intensity scale. Kobe is a port city built along a narrow strip between the mountains and the sea, much of it on soft reclaimed ground. When the shock arrived, that ground liquefied, saturated soil losing its strength and behaving like a fluid. Quay walls slid seaward, buildings tipped over intact. A kilometer-long section of the elevated Hanshin Expressway rolled onto its side. Its concrete support columns snapped clean through, an image that went around the world within hours. More than 6,400 people died. Around 100,000 buildings were destroyed and a further 150,000 badly damaged. 300,000 people were made homeless in a winter night. Fires broke out in districts of older wooden housing, and because the water mains had ruptured, there was little to fight them with. Some neighborhoods simply burned for 2 days. Japan had believed itself prepared. Kobe demonstrated that it was not prepared enough. The initial government response was slow and badly coordinated. Offers of foreign assistance were delayed by procedure. Rescue dogs were held up in quarantine. There was open, uncharacteristic public anger about it, and the criticism was sharp enough to force change. Out of that failure came real reform, revised building codes, a national disaster management overhaul, and, significantly, the birth of Japan's modern volunteer culture. Something like 1.4 million people came to Kobe as volunteers over the following year, most of them young, most with no organization behind them. 1995 is still called the first year of the volunteer in Japan, and the rebuilding was extraordinarily fast. The port, one of the busiest in the world, had been shattered. Container berths were operating again within 2 years and fully restored by 1997. Rail lines reopened within months. Water and gas were restored across the city within about 3 months. The expressway was rebuilt and back in service by the autumn of 1996, under 20 months after it fell. What Kobe did not do was pretend it hadn't happened. A section of the damaged waterfront was deliberately left as it was found. Buckled paving, tilted lampposts, a broken quay edge, and preserved as a memorial park you can walk through. And every December, the city holds the Kobe Luminary. It began in the year of the earthquake when Italy donated the lights, hundreds of thousands of hand-painted bulbs arranged into vaulted archways and illuminated galleries that fill several city blocks. People walk through them slowly, in a crowd, in the cold. It was meant to be a one-off, a gesture of consolation and a way of remembering the dead. It has run nearly every year since. Standing under those arches, the mood is not exactly festive. It is closer to something between a memorial service and a street fair. Thousands of people moving quietly through a corridor of light in the dark of midwinter, 3 weeks before the anniversary. And on that anniversary, in the early morning, people gather in a park downtown around bamboo lanterns arranged to spell a phrase and light them at 5:46 and hold a minute of silence and then go to work. This is how the country metabolizes catastrophe. Not by monument alone and not by forgetting, by rebuilding fast, admitting what went wrong, and setting aside 1 hour a year to stand in the cold together. At 8:15 in the morning on the 6th of August, 1945, a single bomb detonated about 600 meters above the center of Hiroshima. Below the point of detonation stood the Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall, a European-style building with a copper dome designed by a Czech architect and completed in 1915, used for exhibitions and trade offices. It was almost directly beneath the burst. Because the blast came from nearly straight overhead, the downward pressure struck the building's wall's edge, on rather than side on. Everything inside was destroyed and every person in it killed instantly. But the vertical walls and the steel frame of the dome remained standing, while for 2 kilometers in every direction the city was flattened. Around 80,000 people died that morning. By the end of the year, with burns, injury and radiation sickness, the toll is generally estimated at around 140,000. Hiroshima had been a city of some 350,000. In the years after, there was a serious argument about what to do with the ruin. Many survivors wanted it torn down. It was painful to look at, it was structurally unsound, and the city was trying to become a place where people could live again, rather than a wound with a fence around it. Others argued it had to stay. The decision that finally tipped it in the 1960s came partly from the diary of a girl named Hiroko Kajiyama, who had been 1 year old at the time of the bombing and died of leukemia at 16. She had written that the building alone still spoke of the horror. The city council voted in 1966 to preserve it permanently. It has been stabilized several times since, always with the same instruction to engineers: change nothing about how it looks. Keep it exactly as it was found. It is now called the A-bomb Dome, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the very few listed not for beauty or achievement, but as a warning. Around it lies the Peace Memorial Park, laid out by the architect Kenzo Tang on ground that was, before 1945, the busiest commercial district in the city. It was left open deliberately. At its center is a concrete arch, a cenotaph shaped like an ancient clay roof to shelter the souls of the dead, holding a stone chest with the names of all known victims, a register that is still added to every year as survivors die. Stand in the right spot, and the arch frames, in a single line, the eternal flame and the skeleton of the dome behind it. The flame has burned since 1964 and is intended to be extinguished only when the last nuclear weapon on Earth is gone. Then there are the cranes. Sadako Sasaki was 2 years old in 1945 and lived about 1.5 miles from the hypocenter. She developed leukemia at 11. In hospital, she folded paper cranes, following the tradition that 1,000 cranes earn a wish. She died in 1955, aged 12. Her classmates campaigned for a monument, and the Children's Peace Monument now stands in the park with her figure on top, holding a folded crane above her head. Beneath it, glass cases hold chains of paper cranes sent from schools all over the world. Around 10 million arrive each year. They are collected, catalogued, and some are recycled into paper. Every August 6th, the city gathers before dawn. At 8:15 exactly, a bell rings and everyone stops. In the evening, thousands of paper lanterns carrying handwritten messages are floated down the Motoyasu River past the dome, because in the hours after the bombing, the rivers filled with people looking for water, and many of them died there. What visitors find most disorienting about Hiroshima is not the park. It is the city around it. Hiroshima today is an ordinary, pleasant, mid-sized Japanese city of over 1 million people. Trams, department stores, a baseball team people care about deeply, students on bicycles, restaurants serving the local layered okonomiyaki. It was said in 1945 that nothing would grow here for 75 years. Oleander bloomed the following spring and is now the city's official flower. There are around 170 trees still standing in Hiroshima that survived the blast, Hibaku Jumoku, the survivor trees, some of them scarred on one side, still leafing out every April. And in the middle of that ordinary city, kept deliberately unrepaired, is a brick shell with an empty dome. The park is quiet in a way that other quiet places in this film are not. It is not the quiet of a garden or a forest. It is the quiet of a large number of people, all choosing, at the same moment, not to speak. Go north, past Tokyo, past the mountains, through the undersea tunnel or over it by plane, and the country changes character. Hokkaido is the second largest of Japan's islands and holds only about 4% of its population. There are brown bears in the interior. There are volcanoes with no towns beneath them, wetlands where red-crowned cranes dance in the snow, drift ice arriving on the northern coast each February from the Amur River in Russia, the lowest latitude sea ice in the northern hemisphere. The farms are enormous by Japanese standards, the roads are straight, the barns have pitched roofs. It does not look like the rest of Japan, and for most of history it was not part of it. This was Ainu Mosia, the land of the Ainu, an indigenous people with their own language, unrelated to Japanese, their own religion, their own material culture of bark fiber robes with swirling applique patterns, and a worldview in which everything of consequence, the bear, the owl, the fire, the river, a well-made tool, holds a kamui, a spirit. Ainu subsisted by hunting, fishing salmon and gathering, trading extensively with both Japan and the Asian mainland. Their relationship with the Japanese state was, for centuries, unequal and increasingly coercive, and in 1869, the new Meiji government annexed the island outright, renamed it Hokkaido, and opened it to mass settlement from the south. What followed was assimilation policy of a kind familiar from many colonial frontiers. Ainu were forbidden to speak their language in schools, pushed off hunting and fishing grounds and into farming, banned from traditional practices, and legally designated as former Aborigines. The population, already reduced by introduced disease, was scattered and their culture largely driven out of public life. The language today has only a handful of fluent native speakers and is classified as critically endangered. Recognition came slowly and late. The Japanese government formally acknowledged the Ainu as an indigenous people in 2008, not quite 2 decades ago. In 2019, a law was passed to protect and promote Ainu culture. In 2020, the National Ainu Museum and Park, Upapoi, opened on the shore of Lake Poroto, with language classes, performances of the ancient chanting and dances, and a restaurant serving Ainu food. It is a beginning, and it draws honest criticism for focusing on culture as heritage rather than on land rights. But you can now hear the language spoken aloud in a public building in Hokkaido, and that is not nothing. Sapporo, the island's capital, is under 200 years old. A planned city laid out on a grid in the 1870s with American advisors, which is why it has numbered avenues and looks. From the air, unlike any other city in Japan, it has nearly 2 million people and the distinction of being the snowiest large city on Earth, receiving around 5 meters a year. The snow itself has a reputation among skiers approaching the religious. The cold, dry air coming off Siberia crosses the Sea of Japan, picks up moisture, and drops it on Hokkaido's mountains as powder so light it feels like nothing under a ski. And every February, the city turns the problem into a festival. The Sapporo Snow Festival began in 1950 when 6 local high school students built snow sculptures in Odori Park. It now runs for a week, draws around 2 million visitors, and fills a mile-long park with sculptures, some of them 15 meters high, entire castles and temples and famous buildings carved in snow and ice, floodlit at night in a city that is -7 degrees. Teams from around the world compete. The self-defense forces help haul the snow in by the truckload. Then it melts. This is the northern answer to the same question the rest of the country has been answering all along. The land here is not gentle. 5 meters of snow, bears in the woods, ice on the sea, a history of displacement that is still being reckoned with. And the response is a city that arranges its winter around carving that snow into cathedrals for a week and then lets them go.